Recording in progress.
Okay, we'll get started with our West Haven City Council meeting we have tonight. My name's Rob Vanderwood. I'm the mayor of West Haven, and we have our council all with us. Is Kim on? She is perfect. So we have our full council here, and we've got some staff here. We appreciate everyone being here, and our Weber County Sheriff's Lieutenant Jeffries being here. Thank you for being here. We're excited about this evening. It's November 16th. It's 2022 at 6 p.m. And we want to try and get through our agenda, and it should be a good night tonight. We first order of business on here on our agenda is we'll move to our opening ceremonies, and that will get us started with our Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Saunders and our prayer and or moment of silence with Councilmember Schwab.
If the audience would please stand and repeat the pledge after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear, kind, and gracious Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight as humble servants of the city and members of the city, and we thank thee for all the time that we have to work together and to make the best decisions possible for everybody within the city. We ask thee to continue to bless us with moisture in the coming weeks. And we thank thee for all of the wonderful days to come. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Councilmember Saunders and Councilmember Schwab. We appreciate that. We'll move on to item number 3 is our public presentation. Residents attending this meeting will be allotted 2 minutes to express a concern or ask a question about any issue that is not on the agenda. No action can or will be taken on any issues that are presented. Do we have anyone that would like to come up today? Anybody on Zoom? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move forward. Item number 4, upcoming events. Our senior lunch bunch for November is scheduled November 30th at 11:30 a.m. Again, been very crowded, a good group of people coming out. We're excited about that to keep more folks coming out and getting involved with our senior lunch bunch. It's a great group of people. We'll be doing our Howdy Hall and with Mayor and Friends on November 30th. That'll be from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. And if you have any things you would like to bring up into the mayor or council, we'll be available to talk to you at that time. We have our Heart of the Holidays celebration coming up on November 28th at 6 p.m. We've got some we're going to be lighting up City Hall. They're out there putting the lights up now, or else someone was stealing the leaves off our trees. I'm not sure what it was, but they're putting lights up now, so we're excited for that too. That'll be a great night. We'll have hot dogs and donuts and hot chocolate that night, along with the choirs from the schools will be there singing as well, and some other entertainment with vendors. Hopefully that'll be a great night, and we encourage everybody from the city and those surrounding cities to come visit with us. Just so the council's aware too, we do need to look at, for that holiday coming up, that we will possibly been asked to get involved with the hot dogs, working with the hot dogs, and the sleigh ride. The sleigh ride, we're going to have a hay ride with trucks and trailers out there. So I want you just to be thinking about that. We'll talk a little bit more about how we want to go about doing that. The city will probably provide the trailer, and we're going to try and see if we can put some sides up on that trailer with some hay on it so it's safe. But if you've got spouses that are interested in helping with that too, we're going to be a little short-handed with what we've been asked to probably task that night. So we'll keep that in mind. We also have Weber County Fire Department. We'll be celebrating with them over at the Firehouse Subs tomorrow. That's at 11 o'clock over there, and I think Councilmember Schwab will be joining me to celebrate that. They've got a $14,000 apparatus for chest compressions that they'll be receiving over there, and it'll be nice to celebrate that with them. Okay. If anybody else would like to go, please let me know, but we did have to RSVP for that. Is there any other upcoming events that the council has? Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, council updates. Any council updates from the council?
Mayor, this is Kim. We had moved our mock city council to tomorrow night. And so while we're doing our capital project plan, the youth council will be having their mock city council in the council chambers. So we're all ready for that. I've given them a really interesting problem about police departments and budget. So I think that will be really, really good for them to do.
What time was that again, Kim?
They're starting at 5:15 just to make sure they get all the way through it before 6:30. We try to get them out by 6:30 because it's a school night. So 5:15.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Is there anyone that can attend with that or want to?
Yeah, anybody can attend, but I think we're all going to be in the next room. So
I think I'll go to that mock meeting. The other one. That'll be good.
I might be stepping out a couple of times, but they're all set. So
Yeah, our meeting's scheduled from 5 to 7, so, okay. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to item number 6, action on consent agenda. Item A is our city council minutes for November 2nd of 2022. Item B is for waste management. That would be for $30,247.65. And item C is for Weber County Transfer Station for $18,593.96. Any questions or concerns about the action on the consent agenda?
Move to approve consent agenda items A, B, and C.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call on that. Councilmember Morse?
Aye.
Councilmember Call?
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders?
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon?
aye.
And Councilmember Schwab?
Aye.
Okay, motion approved on the consent agenda. Thank you. Move on to item 7, action on the Planning Commission meeting recommendations. Item number A is preliminary site plan approval for a light industrial warehouse project, approximately at 2000 South, 1900 West. It has the parcel numbers listed there as well, and this is for Prism Realty Corporation with Brooke Morris. You want to come up and please just state your name and address for the record, please.
Evening, how is everybody? Wishing you happy Thanksgiving in advance.
Thank you.
Cherie said I shouldn't have bought a turkey. She's killing her own this year, and I missed it. So,
Oh,
I'm Brooke Morris. I'm president of Prism Realty Corporation. Our Utah office is 5532 Lillehammer Drive, Suite 207 in Park City, 84098. Really appreciate your time tonight. You might recall that we went through some discussion on the rezone, and we did all agree on that. Since then, we've done actually a tremendous amount of work. You're approving the preliminary site plan, but in the details, almost all the civil engineering we've completed, the elevations and so forth. So we've done a lot of work on it with good consultants. So if you have any specific questions tonight, we should be able to answer, I think, most of them pretty well. We're very excited about the project. If you had any questions as to why we would do this, aside from my opinion, Chris Liddell, who's one of the top CBRE industrial brokers, is here to speak if you care to hear an opinion about that. Also, Chris Roybal, who's head of the Weber County Economic Development, is strongly supportive of the project. He was generous enough tonight to come, and if you have questions about why are we doing this, you can get the economic development opinion. We're really excited about the project. It's maybe I'm being a little presumptuous, but as far as I can tell driving around, I think it's going to be really a step above of any industrial property you have in town, and that's our goal, is to make it your Class A project. The elevations are really high quality, the materials are, the landscaping is, the design of the project to avoid the neighbors and keep all the activity internally focused on the project to not impact others. So we've given a lot of thought, and I hope anyway you will agree that it's something you want to proceed on. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, do you have questions?
I was just curious. I think you said that you didn't know exactly who the tenant would be. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, it's very, very, very common. I won't say 100%, but it's very common for this type project to be what's called a speculative development. So whether it's 50,000 feet or 100 or 300,000 square feet, we'll usually put up a light industrial warehouse. Sometimes there is a tenant we will pre-lease to, but at this stage, the buildings aren't constructed, and so that you don't know if a 50,000 foot tenant will show up or a 100,000 foot tenant. So this is really based on surveys of how limited the supply is in this area. The business depot in Ogden's just about full, and they don't have much more land to build out. And there's a lot of demand still in the area, so I don't think we'll have any problem leasing it. But the specific tenants are kind of to be determined.
Okay. And what are the typical tenants that you see using
Oh
this
man,
project?
that's hard to answer too.
I mean, you don't have to
no,
answer them all out.
it's a fair enough question. So we have it's designed slightly differently, but it's a very similar project to this one. We have a project in Salt Lake in the airport area on 5600 West and 201. And that's two buildings like this, comprising 156,000 square feet. That's only a little bit bigger than this. We have a food manufacturer in there. The state of Utah has their health department in there. We have a company called Womack Tool who does reconstruction of hydraulic pumps for the mining industry. We have a company that does printing. So if you were a college student, bought a poster on your wall, you could order it online, they'd print it and send it to you. We have a company that builds furniture and distributes it. So it really is a very, very wide range of industry that typically ends up in these parks. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I think the only question I had on here was that we had a 15-foot allotment running down, and they've moved with the sidewalk in there. They've moved that down to a 10.
We moved that to comply to the UDOT requirement there, but it'll match up with the 7-Eleven that you do have. Yeah.
Just a question on here, I guess, is that where it matches up with the 7-Eleven, you end up having that.
The restaurant.
Yeah, well, you got that. And then you have, but as soon as you get past that, you've got the detention ponds on both sides, it looks like. And overall, are you going to try and keep the sidewalk next to the road? Are you?
Yes.
Because I see it in your plans that way.
Yes.
Is that a problem to try and move the sidewalk closer to the parking lot area to give more of the landscape area?
It would be challenging to do that, yeah. What you would end up with, what we look at in the design is how is it going to stand the test of time? So if I end up moving the sidewalk and I have a really, a 2 or 3 foot landscape strip on the road and then a much smaller landscape strip inbound because we split them with the sidewalk, neither one of those end up being that robust or that great to maintain either. So we tend to put the landscaping in on the parking area where the customers and the tenants and the employees are going to be able to enjoy it, still visible from the street, and then but the high use area on the street and the landscaping there is, it's just a cleaner long-term
I
solution.
think UDOT requires that because of the snow removal
Yes.
on that side, right? So with that said, that's why I was just thinking for safety purposes, it makes it a little nicer to move the sidewalk away from that area and they can plow snow onto
Right.
whatever you have. But just a thought, I don't know if the council is.
So we'll,
that.
if you like, I'll put that on my list. We're going to UDOT very soon, a couple of weeks, probably, maybe 3. But for our final approval on their driveway, all the driveway locations, that we've had preliminary preliminary meetings with them, and they're fine with it, but we're not through the final process yet because we weren't through this final process. So then we'll submit all that, and we'll have that sidewalk discussion with them. I'm pretty sure right now we're meeting their standard, I think is what's happening.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the case. It just was a thought. On the other side too, you've got, looks like possible semis coming in to that for dock areas.
In the main central area, we do, yeah.
That's a 40-foot span across there to get the semis in and out.
That's a 40-foot width driveway, yes it is.
Okay. Just hoping on that area pulling in and out, they're going to be able to do left-hand turns on that as well.
So the 40-foot dimension is something we've used, many, many times. There are folks that will try for 35 to, I don't know why, save on concrete. I don't know why they would do it, but we have found the 40-foot width to work fine for circulation.
Mayor, can I make a comment about that?
Sure.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi. So they've met with Ed and I multiple times, and one of the things that Ed and the fire department have had them do is provide turning templates to make sure that the width and stuff like that is adequate. And Ed has reviewed like the traffic flow, the turning in and turning out. And from an engineering perspective, there aren't any issues with the width of that and the ability of larger trucks to turn. So that aspect of the site design has already been talked to them about, and they have provided those templates to make sure that they have room to do that.
But UDOT approved the fact that they could turn out of the project and head south from.
On a preliminary level, they have received UDOT approval. They don't have the final approval on it. So yeah. So if there are any changes that they have to make to it as a result of UDOT, then they'll make that between preliminary and final. But when they met for the initial pre-application meeting with UDOT, UDOT didn't raise any immediate red flags about having left turns out.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, council?
Okay, if something comes up, I'm obviously available, so. All right, thank you.
If not, I'm ready for a motion.
Move to approve preliminary site plan approval of light industrial warehouse project at approximately 2000 South, 1900 West.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion carries. You guys got it through, so thank you. Looking forward to that. We'll move to number 8 on here, the bid award for 2700 West in Hooper Canal siphon. I think this is for the storm drain along 2700 West and the north side of the Hooper Canal to the slough. Matt, did you want to take this one?
Yes, I had Ed attend a Wasatch Front meeting for us, Wasatch Front Regional Council meeting, so he wasn't here to represent. This is the canal siphon project we talked about with the council a few months ago. This remedies a stormwater drainage issue that we have with the Hooper Irrigation Company. Reroutes the stormwater from hitting into the canal to get it into the slough. Our budget on this project was $60,000. We put out a bid for it. We did have 4 respondents. The low bid came under the budgeted amount at which was Thurgood Excavating. They came in at $59,411. If you'll notice, we had a slough cleanout amount. They had added on a cleanout amount that to kind of go through and dredge the slough. This is just a regular maintenance that we were going to do. But at this time, the low bid for the siphon is not the low bid for the slough. And so we'd just like to proceed with the base bid to get that siphon in place. This work would take place over this winter and be completed before irrigation happens in the spring. And so with the council's approval, we would ask for for a motion to approve awarding the bid to Thurgood Excavating in the amount of $59,411.
Any questions, council?
I will move to approve the bid for the 2700 West Hooper Canal siphon to Thurgood Excavating in the amount of $59,411.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call on this. Councilmember Call,
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders,
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon,
Aye.
Councilmember Schwab,
Aye.
Councilmember Morse.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries for the bid award. Congratulations. We'll look forward to getting that put in. We've been waiting quite a while for that.
Yeah,
That'll be
that'd be
good.
great.
Item number 9 on here, a bid award for Havenwood intersection improvements. I think this is the intersection of 2450 South and 2300 West. Matt?
Yes, this one was a project where we had to go and get U.S. Army Corps of Engineers approval. That came in much quicker than we had anticipated. So it's not a budgeted project, but it is something that we can cover under the Transportation Sales Tax Reserve Fund. This is a project that, since this subdivision was completed, has created traffic issues. Our original estimate was somewhere in between $70,000 and $100,000 for the project. As it was bid out, we actually received a bid under $50,000 by Craig Thorpe. Craig Thorne in the amount of $46,191.64, and this would widen that road from the 16 feet to 29.5 feet, which would make it more of a standard sized road, allowing 2 lanes worth of traffic each direction. It just fixes an issue. I give a lot of credit to Ed for his relationship that he's developed with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Weber Basin Water Conservancy District. It came through amazingly fast, and I think it was just a good project, and he really made a good argument for it. And so with that, we would ask for a motion to award the bid to Craig Thorne Construction, with the knowledge that we will need to be amending our budget to pull these funds from the Transportation Sales Tax Fund, which has a sufficient amount of money in this and is great for the use of such projects.
Okay, council, any questions on this project? Ready for a motion then?
Go ahead.
Move to approve project bid award for Havenwood intersection at 2300 West, 2450 South to Craythorne in the amount of $46,191.64.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this project? Okay, we'll do a roll call on this one. Councilmember Schwab,
Aye.
Councilmember Morse,
Aye.
Councilmember Call,
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders,
Aye.
and Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Motion passes. Well, there you go, another project.
Thank you.
When do we propose that will be completed?
Well, we'd need to have it done before April of this next year. So we're looking forward to getting it in, start widening. It probably won't be fully completed because we're going to miss the asphalt season, but that'd be the last thing that goes in right in April timeframe.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 10, discussion and possible action on procurement policy. I know we've talked about this and we've got some, I'm sure there'll be some discussion on this, but Matt, did you have anything you wanted to add to this before we turn it over to the council for questions?
Yeah, we appreciate the council's time. We've had this in front of you during a couple different work sessions, and we've refined it a little bit. The latest ones is that we have kind of renumbered it. The item in the packet shows kind of a blue line instead of a red line of what the recent changes were. This would we might need to finalize the numbering with Amy, but this would be the section we're looking at. And it does include some of the language that we just talked about 2 weeks ago, as far as making sure this is for items that were approved in the budget, that this doesn't just open it up to the purchasing agent or the city manager to spend money, but has to be only for purchases that have been approved through the city council. As we go through it, a few other little tweaks and fixes as discussed 2 weeks ago. And so we're open to other questions. The process on this is just to get a final look at it from the council in order for us to post it and publish it as a public hearing. And then there would, of course, be final discussion at that time before it was adopted by the council.
Okay, thank you. Council, do you have questions?
The only one that I made note on was 33.010.07, invitation for bid procedures. On number 3 about tie bids. That the city may at its sole discretion negotiate with the tie bidders, which would look like what?
It kind of gets an interesting situation when you get a true tie bid, and so this would be to negotiate to make sure that the services are of the same amount. Where we are looking at an invitation for bid, this is when we come down to the low bid, low and best services, more or less, to it. So we do have that language in there that we can just make sure that, hey, here's the low bid, here's what you can do. Are you sure things can come through on this? There could be a little bit of value engineering on that, saying, hey, we need to come back and forth. This just gives the staff a little bit of opportunity to do it. As we do and negotiate with this would be communication with both parties. It wouldn't be us picking a favorite over the other, but really going through it. This would be a very rare occasion, especially when you have an invitation for bid. I mean, there's usually variances on little things, but just in the very rare occasion that we do have bids that look like qualified, and it just gives us a chance to ask a few more questions before we proceed. So I haven't seen it happen.
Well, I wouldn't think so either, but it's there, and I don't know what you would know.
Yeah.
That's why I wondered that. Or award it by lot, or re-advertise it. I don't know why you can't just say, well, it's a tie bid. We've used this contractor before several times. That would be our preference, so we just choose that. Why do we have to choose by lot or negotiate?
Because generally when you do an invitation for bid, it is low bid wins if they're qualified. And so if they were both qualified for some reason, there would have to be some form of it. If we wanted to strike the negotiation and just do a lot, by lot or by experience, I'd be happy to entertain that. So
I don't know either way. I just don't know what you would negotiate amongst a tie.
yeah.
So
And I'm not sure if we always go with a low bid. Is that our ordinance right now that we go with a low bid every time?
The lowest responsible bid. So we need to make sure it's responsible. That's the invitation for bid. If we go for request for proposal, there's other things that we can rate and gauge on those. But generally for construction projects, we go for lowest responsible bid, which has its pros and cons.
What other questions, council? I have a question, Matt, if I can. While the council's looking that over, what current contracts do we currently have now?
What current contracts we have?
Yeah.
As far as contracts for services, we have several. I mean, anything from Gardner Engineering, Waste Management.
Those are for services. Do we have anything for procurement for purchase?
As far as like arranged discounted prices, not necessarily. We have state contracts we used, and we haven't engaged in discount pricing. That is something that has been brought up and we'd like to pursue. And as we do that, I think those are covered under like the agreed upon expenses. Generally, a lot of those would be under the under the $1,000 mark or whatnot. So it gives the flexibility to department heads. But as we pursue some of those and try to get some savings on those regular maintenance type of items, it'd be a good thing to pursue.
Okay. And I think one thing I'd like to see too, if just to let the council know, I think we've discussed it briefly, was that when we make purchases, like for example, if I go purchase something for senior lunch bunch, we don't have access to a card or anything of that nature to make sure that we're not paying sales tax on that. I know the youth council, just purchased a lot of Halloween candy, and we spent about $77 in tax on that, where there seems like there should be a better setup that we have, so that we're not paying tax on overall on any purchases that we make like that. It just is another savings, right? And then the only other thing is, I've read through this a little bit more, is on the credit card side. I guess department heads would be the only ones that would have the credit cards?
Generally speaking, the city hasn't used credit cards. That would be a determination. We would have a credit card approval form that we have approved uses and set levels on how much those individuals would have access to. In working in other municipalities, you can set those limits. So if we needed one for possibly recreation, it's at a set rate, so they can just go and take care of some purchases. But then you'd have other ones that were open. We would generally look at a basic one that would likely be kept by the recorder for some large purchases, possibly even paying purchases like for the waste management one to garner points for their rebate systems and that credit cards have. And so they would be very limited. Of course, not every employee would have them, and not necessarily every department head, just depending on what kind of purchases are necessary. I mean, I wouldn't imagine our community development having a credit card, or even our engineer, but likely our public works and our rec department and myself.
This is just a question, does the council feel comfortable, because it looks like, that they have up to $5,000 that they can purchase as a department head, is that correct? That's what I'm reading anyway. Is that something that you're comfortable with?
Is there a plan in place to audit those purchases, or how do they expense those purchases so that, how does that work?
So we receive an opportunity to review all purchases at this point in the current process, and department heads have that range right now where they can make purchases in that amount. So we're already seeing all the invoices as they come through, and question those, and so that's kind of an ongoing process right now.
I have no issue with having folks that can use credit cards. I think most organizations give that ability to responsible persons within. So I have no issue with that. I just would want to make sure that there's a good audit system in place to ensure that those expenses are compliant with the policy.
Mm-hmm. Generally, as we look at it, and as we're reviewing the employee handbook, the model that we're looking at has a credit card purchasing policy in there. So it tells what everybody's required to fill out. And in previous, you'd get the statements, and the employees with the credit cards would have to make sure they had receipts for every one of those, and they go through the process for review. And if you ever lose one of those receipts, it's very stressful, and you're calling the companies to have receipts reissued and everything like that. So,
well, any other questions?
I don't have any other questions. I'll make a motion to, I guess, what is the motion that we need to make here?
Let's just make sure.
This
Any
is a
other questions?
discussion, isn't it?
It's a discussion with possible action, and it's not necessarily to adopt this,
It's just to
but
move
it's
forward,
approved
right?
to set a public hearing, kind of thing. If you're all good with the language on it, a possible motion to set a public hearing on December 7th.
Any other?
You have any other questions? Anybody? Okay.
I'll make a motion to move the procurement policy to public hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call on that. Councilmember Saunders.
Aye.
Councilmember Morse.
Aye.
Councilmember Schwab.
Aye.
Councilmember Call.
Aye.
And Councilmember Dixon.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries to move to the procurement policy to public hearing. So we'll see how everything works with that. That'll be good. We'll move to item number 11. This is discussion and possible action on Staker Farm park reimbursement. This is, I think, for park impact fees to review to date with some of the buildings gone. Matt, did you want to cover that?
So this is kind of an item that's come up, and as we looked at it, there's in the MDA, Castle Creek has inferred a little bit on this, but in the MDA it has language that says that at the time the park is started, that the city would contribute park impact fees for 125 lots, which would have included pretty much the initial layout of what Staker Farm was going to be based on the original MDA. They've since had an amendment that added some more lots, but the contribution to the park was negotiated separately in that. And so they've mentioned the reimbursement from this, and the language is in it reads that they should actually get all 125 lots. Currently, they have 41 that have finished, and they've kind of slowed down on their phase 2. They have 2 other phases that will be continuing as we go through this. They're amiable to discuss how this goes through. One of the options that we have is to pay that full amount, which would be $237,875, which would contribute towards the construction of the park. And but I think, while they still have to put the lawn, and there's some improvements going on there, and they have a plan to attack that in the spring. I think it would be a little more straightforward if we went to them and asked if we could do an amendment to pay them back for the 41 lots that are completed, and then possibly waive or do a reimbursement of park impact fees as we go forward on the other the remaining 84 units that are set up there. I think that would fulfill the spirit of the MDA, while not more or less making the city beholden for it if they kind of slow down on development of those 125 lots. And so I just wanted to touch base with the council before we started any talks. We've had some preliminary ones, but I didn't want to get too far down a road that if the council had hesitation on that direction.
I think that's a really good idea, Matt. I think that we should, honor the contract as it is right now, but not pay for future whatever might happen.
Other comments?
I just am trying to understand, because in here it mentioned that you prefer 2A over 2B. Is there a reason for that?
I think it's just an accounting loophole, or kind of just a loop-de-loop that we're avoiding, because right now, if they would pay the park impact fee, then we would just be refunding it right back to them. So I figured if we're not really going to keep it and it's owed to them, we just look to eliminate that requirement of them.
Okay, makes sense.
What is the current process of getting the grass established until the park can be turned over?
So they are looking to, in the spring, seed it again on the east side, and then pull out a bit of the area over on the west side, do some treatment to the soil to help with some of the alkali options, and then sod that west side. So we go through there, and several species of the grass that were seeded have come in. It's more or less the fescue and kind of taller grass, the field grass kind of thing. We don't have a lot of the Kentucky kind of grass didn't take, and so they're looking to go through, grub out some of the bigger stuff, the broadleaf kind of stuff that we've killed down with spray, and then reseed that in the spring. And we're hoping the snowpack continues well.
So if it gets reseeded and we have a drought again, do we just bump this off another year until they can complete a fully landscaped park?
Well, that's the thing, is the agreement with the MDA says they are owed this money when the park is started. So it's not even we're holding off and completed. They have a document that says that they should have been paid a year ago when they started it. So not exactly the language that I like.
I don't think we have an MDA that is beautiful.
Yeah, we're working on them.
But you do have to look at the concessions we made, as well. I think we made a lot of concessions as well, waiting for this park to get done. I mean, Matt and I talked about this a little bit prior to in our meeting, and I mean, they did have water. It wasn't like, I know it was delayed till I think April sometime, but late in the season. But they've had water all summer, and it just hasn't worked out. Plus, I'm not sure if we're getting reimbursed or how we're getting reimbursed for the mowing and the spraying and all that from the developer.
So they are willing to do that. We have not invoiced them yet for the services we've done this year. They are willing to pay amounts for actual costs for the weed killer that we've done and the times that we've mowed. We've kept track of those.
Is there a time frame that, I mean, because I look at it as the services was done this year, so we should probably invoice it this year, not wait.
No, we did our last knockdown a few weeks ago, and so we should be generating an invoice for that.
Okay. I think that's important because that might also affect, some of the cost and money that's going back and forth. Any other questions on the park? Sacred Farms?
No, I think that's a really good suggestion, though. I mean, I think we do need to bill them for taking care of that. So I think that's a good suggestion, Mayor.
Anything else? I guess we can make a motion on that if you'd like to. Exactly how would we want to make this motion, Matt?
Just a motion, if it's the 2A, be happy just to have a motion that says, process the payment for the 41 acres or 41 lots and approval to work with Castle Creek to amend the agreement to eliminate park impact fees further.
I'll make the motion. Move to process payment of $87,683 for the completed 41 lots and work with Castle Creek to amend the agreement to eliminate park impact fees for the next 84 lots completed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call. Councilmember Morse?
Aye.
Councilmember Saunders?
Aye.
Councilmember Dixon?
Aye.
Councilmember Call?
Aye.
And Councilmember Schwab?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, Council. We'll report back to you on how that goes.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to get a follow-up on that to make sure, see how that goes. That'd be wonderful. Thanks,
I'd be interested in knowing what our invoice to them is as well. So
We'll move on to item number 12, discussion for engineering audit.
I have a PowerPoint I'd like to share with the council as we go through. Would you like me to move up to the podium, or is it okay to
Whatever's
run from
comfortable.
here? I'm okay here if that's all right. Let me pull that up.
We'll allow it.
Thank you.
I tried to get Amy's attention, but she didn't even pay attention to me.
So, we've received a request from the council about explaining and getting a little bit better understanding on the engineering costs that the city accrues and what the roles and responsibilities are between our city engineer and our contracted engineering services. And so I put together some information, kind of did a deep dive into some of the invoices, and I have some supporting Excel sheets I'd be happy to share and send out to the council to allow them to do their own exploration. But wanted to kind of give a discussion and a presentation on some of the approaches on this. And so as we go through the discussion points tonight, will be just a short introduction, talking about the roles and responsibilities between our city engineer employee and the contracted services, some historical data on fees and charges that we've had, and then the areas of focus that we've been able to achieve since we've brought in an employee city engineer, and what we're anticipating additional improvements and efficiencies going forward. So as we go forward, during the previous budget cycle, during 2021-2022, the council decided to split the contracted engineer planner position and to have our community development director and city engineer. Now, what I've kind of relayed is we had a lot of talk about the community development director and the community development position because it was kind of the new one, and we're expanding that, and it was all on the growth. I will say that we didn't have that much discussion on the city engineer. And so I'd like to kind of, remedy that and see what we can do about bringing the understanding of the city engineer and the contracted services up to, on par with our understanding of the community development. And so we're looking to see how we can handle that. The roles and responsibilities that were outlined in the job description shows that the city engineer is really kind of the administrator overseer of all the engineering tasks in the city. Many of these are the ones that were pulled from the job description. They oversee all the engineering reviews recommendations. They have clearance for building permits and other things. They produce and direct the production of our studies and reports, report to residents and developers on questions or respond to them regarding engineering and development and such, generate and update design and construction standards and specifications, provide support and input on engineering-related fees, impact fees, all those items that we have, coordinate engineering requirements for all other city departments, and represent the city on engineering matters with other cities. They are expected to have of course, an engineering degree and be able to do design, but in a lot of ways they are managerial, administrative, and taking care of those items. They are the person to represent us on engineering issues. And in the past, on certain capital improvement projects, I've actually engaged with an owner's rep in order so that they can talk the talk with the developer or architects, engineers, and those kind of things that I might not understand the processes are, and to be able to catch issues that could be used to buffalo the non-engineer, non-professional construction type of people. And so in that way, the city engineer takes care of those lot of items. We still have a lot of services that a single engineer doesn't provide solutions for. And that's what we look at with the contracted engineer services. The two biggest items that they do is a subdivision review. And when you go through subdivision review, there's several steps on the subdivision review that deviate from just an engineer expertise. And so there's, just wanted to show off or relay a little bit of that. On the invoices, as you see through Gardner Engineering, you'll see a lot of surveyor work. And that's partly on the plat review, making sure the plats are correct, They go through, they check all the corners, make sure that we don't have issues there. That requires a professional surveyor. It's not allowed to be done by an engineer. It's a different certification, different DOPL license on those. Plan review, the engineers go through and do a thorough inspection on stormwater, sewer, fire, all those type of things. Then they assist in the pre-construction discussions and also with utility coordination on subdivisions, and then follow up with actual inspections as they go through. Those are things that really are growth related. And with the explosive growth and the many subdivisions through there, we have a lot of work that goes on those lines. City engineers in other areas generally don't get into that, or if they do, they've got a much more developed engineering department within their city so that they can do that. The other aspect of it is large capital project expenses. This is where you get the design, you're pulling in structural engineers, civil engineers, all these different types of engineers to make sure things are built. Grant assistance and making sure our grants are set up, and then the direct project management in working through the issues. Our city engineer would be in there, make sure if there's an issue, say we need to take care of it. They would be the ones who go through and run the gauntlet with that. And then of course again, inspections. Other engineering reports are when we talk about, a GIS type situation with community development, or even things that we request on other things. As we go through, taking care of that. The historical data, just to let you know, from January 2018 is about the latest that I have on files on site. We do have, it shows that range. That's the monthly cost that we've had. It's ranged up to over $40,000 to Gardner Engineering. And we can see the trend is slowly going down. It was $32,000 per month down to about $27,000 per month now. You see that spike in the month of July. The next chart that I'm going to show shows that spike not there. And that's because we had the stormwater impact fee analysis and feasibility plan come through this year. And that was a $28,000 expense that's not common for our engineering. So I wanted to kind of give a view of where our costs are without that. And that really brings the trending line a little bit lower as we go through. And so we do have bumps and spikes as we have larger projects and subdivision reviews come through. This next chart kind of shows where our expenses go through. And this shows on the current contract. That's where it's been broken down more comprehensively and in a better way. So we can go back to November 2020 when that contract started. And if you notice, 42% of it is projects. That's largely, that's mainly infrastructure projects. So that's your road projects, 4700 West, 2550 South, caught the very end of that project in this. The planning for the road projects, and we're catching in on the 3300 South project. So 42% of our costs are large capital project improvements. And that comes to an amount of $255,000 over the last 2 years, last 20 months, or actually 22 months. The second biggest is our subdivision reviews. And so that represents 30% of the cost over the last 22 months, and that's been in the amount of $182,000. So those two big chunks are directly related to the growth, the expansion, and the improvements throughout the city. In that way, those things our city engineer is definitely acting as a quality assurance, quality control aspect for our staff, and they're taking care of those directions. You do see that there's the inclusion of the stormwater IFFP, just to let you know. That's just happened this year, and it represents 5% of our overall engineering bills. And so while we've reduced some of the costs elsewhere, we've had that study that's kind of blown it up a little bit. If you look here, we got a little chart of how it compares. The blue is the first year, and Ed's come on and he's kind of steered that line lower. And he's taken advantage of several items and just looking at some efficiencies. A lot of times when our contracted services would come, they would send the engineer and the engineer tech to every meeting. And so we were getting charged more or less $190 per meeting per hour every time they'd come. And Ed said, you know, I don't need both of you every time. And so, you know, pick and choose who you are. If there's a big meeting, yeah, bring both. But just little changes like that, eliminating has seen some reduction in cost. If you look on the right side there, we have a monthly average cost during the first year of about $27,452. And then the second year without that stormwater thing, just so we could try to compare apples to apples, it's reduced down, to $24,785. Our annual expenses by year, we are projected to be lower in the amount of $28,000 in 2022 from what we spent last year, and we're much lower than the 2019 year when we had the $426,000. So we're bringing those costs down lower as we take over items. I would say, the first 3 months of Ed's tenure, Steve was heavily involved, and we still hadn't broken out a lot of those processes. We're hoping that as we continue, we see some of that efficiency still improve. As we look at that, when I talk about improvements made, some of the things, and I joke with Ed that he's, Sherry's in the spotlight with community development in front of you every council meeting with adjustments. He's kind of down in the tunnels of the city and not seeing a lot of the things he's done. Just feedback from even Gardner Engineering and our staff, as well as people that we're working for. There's been some significant improvements made in our engineering representation as a city. The internal administration is huge. Previously, Gardner would kind of pick up the administrative services, and they would be the contact for developers. Right now, that's not the case. Everything goes through Ed. He becomes the contact, and he makes the call on what goes to the contract engineers as well. Also, a much better watchdog process. Ed's there calling out and asking and making sure that just as developers bring in their engineering reports, that things don't go through. We had a development recently that had a detention pond that was going to rely on percolation going into the ground. And Ed looked at it and said, your percolation says that your pond needs to be 5 feet deep. The water levels in that area are at 3 feet deep. There's no way it's going to soak into the ground. It's just going to be a standing pond. So you got to come back and come up with different areas. That's just a nice way that is we have a dedicated engineer to check on that. Coordination improvements has been huge as well. He's been involved in the DRC, the design review process. One of the things we've heard from Public Works and Stormwater is just a better understanding of what's going on and coordination as we go through. And then relationship management. I mentioned earlier with the Havenwood the subdivision. He's great. He's made great relationships with UDOT, with Weber Base and Army Corps of Engineers, and it's allowed us to get a really good response from some of these monolithic organizations that can kind of stand as roadblocks in a lot of ways. And he's been working very hard on that. And then just the gatekeeper enforcement. Like I said, he's there to say yay, nay, and not just let everything go through. We still have a long ways to go, and many ways that we can reduce some costs. And so we have some expected improvements that we're looking to continue to do. Some of those will see costs. Some of those will just be improvements in services. One of those that we've talked a little bit about, and we're looking forward to the procurement process being passed, and so we can move on that, is internalizing bid management. That's an administrative thing that we've still allowed Gardner Engineering to run with. We're going to be bringing that in. That won't reduce costs amazingly, but there's time that they put in just to prepare the bid documents, and we get billed all that. And we're working on some boilerplate forms that we can take their designs, put it in, and get those sent out so we can make sure things are taken care of. Another small cost that we're looking at is small project management. Perfect example is our Class B and C road monies, where we're doing slurry cells. That's something our Public Works Department has relied on Gardner to create all the bid documents and everything. And really and truly, that's very easy. You literally could go to Google Maps if you wanted to, use PowerPoint to show the streets and tell the bidders that they just need to confirm measurements, and you have your boilerplate. And so we don't need to go uber engineering on some of these things that we've done. One thing that I tease our contract engineering group is they did a bid document to replace the backstop of the parks at Country Park, and it literally was a 40-page document. It should have been about a 5-page. And so we've had long discussions with them on right-sizing bid managements and reducing costs that way. The other things that we have that Ed is already in process of and will be bringing to the council over the next 2 to 3 months are several of the code standards updates. And those include subdivision standards, what's required. Our road standards we've already discussed, but we're going to be looking at some more. Parking standards is one that we have a high priority on, and you'll see that even as soon as December 7th during that meeting. Curb cut, street cut standards, we don't have any. It's very loose, and that's something that they're working on right now. And then just our fee justification on how things, how we charge things, and making sure we're recouping what we need to, and making sure that our roads and our public works infrastructure is taken care of in an appropriate way. So that's a lot of me talking. The information here, I'll be sending this to you, and I can share the Excel spreadsheets if you'd like. But it's something that we'd like to discuss even more, because I think this is one of those ones where the value of the position and the true savings might not be as easy to see, but we're seeing some really, really good improvements on processes and that doesn't always flash before the council's eyes. As far as actual costs on things, we've reduced the cost on the contract services by $28,000. The actual cost of the engineer position, with the special service district taking up more of a share of theirs, we've saved about $30,000 per year on that one as well. So in essence, for our engineering costs over the last year, we've saved about $60,000 over what we were paying for previous contracted engineering services, and with the new approach. I don't think we'll get to a point where we pay for the full cost of his, because there's a lot of administrative positions and determinations that he does that isn't a direct, this is good, this will save us money. But the efficiencies and improvement of services is something that we're working very hard on. And it comes back with Gardner Engineering. It's a cost that's directly related to growth, and particularly with subdivision reviews, we have an income, a revenue source that's paid through the subdivision fees that covers that cost. In fact, covers a little bit more than that, so it does recoup some of our employee contract system. And then the project costs, a good portion of that is covered through the grants, or at least the grant matches on those. So when you look at that, that's about 72% of our engineering costs are the big projects we're doing and the subdivision reviews. The other portions are more of your run-of-the-mill kind of things that we are going to be looking to see if we can further reduce the cost on as we continue to refine our process in that. So that's a lot of me talking. I know you didn't have a chance to look at this information previously. We can get that out to you and let you dive into that, and I'd be happy to take questions either now or individually through email or phone calls, if you have questions or any issues that you need us to address.
Matt, I sat with Sherry and Ed at the training, and I was very impressed at the amount of coordination that they do with the department heads, and they were talking about how much easier it is and how they get all their questions answered in these meetings, and they spend a lot of time communicating, which I think is something that was changed when Ed came in. So I was really impressed with both Ed and Sherry and the amount of coordination they do, and how much better it is for everyone.
Appreciate you saying that. We've had a few things. Dave Reed with the fire department, he said that West Haven used to be the banner that you didn't want to be, and now that we've made some of these changes, which the council's allowed us to do, we're almost one of the example cities for to work with. And so, while we're still dealing with a lot of development, some of these investments have really changed just the approach that how outside agencies look and interact and appreciate it. And on the other side, some of the developers and that are complaining a little bit more because there is a little bit more of that watchdog attitude that comes through, and trying to make sure that things just don't slide through just because they paid an engineer to say it would work, and Ed's coming back and saying, no, that doesn't really work.
Well, for me, this is awesome. I like colors and pictures, and this was perfect. So thank you very much for showing this.
I'll remember what your weak spots are then.
Hey, pie charts, graphs, colors, you got me.
Red,
For me, it's just pie.
red, yellow, and
so-
green.
Do you have any comments?
No, I appreciate you preparing this and helping us understand it. Thank you.
And just to address, I mean, there are a few things that seems to be taking a little bit longer. Councilmember Calls asked for parking. We've got some things, and unfortunately, this meeting's a horrible example because we had a lot of things on the agenda, but we're going through at a pretty good clip. And so we really should have had the parking ordinance up for discussion. But we'll be bringing a lot of those things, and then even some of the subdivision standards. You'll actually see a lot of these things start trickling through over the next 2 to 3 months as he's been working on those and really trying to work through on some standards that just gets us up to current expectations in a city and make sure that our liabilities are covered better. We still have very expensive engineering costs because we have a lot of growth.
Will you go back to the slide about what you're changing?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's a good one. So with that 72% that's going to wane down as the economy may or may not crash, we're going to start seeing a lot of those things on the right jump to the left, right?
That's what I'm expecting.
Okay.
As we go through, road standards is one that Steve and I and Councilmember Call was involved with. We got those updated, but there's some still things that are set up. You'll see as we talk on December 7th with parking standards, we really need to look at driveway requirements. We're having a lot of people in some of these townhome divisions frustrated because they can't park their extended cab truck in their driveway because then it overextends over the sidewalk, which is not allowed in the HOA or even by city things. So those are some things that we've picked up on, and we want to make sure that those are taken care of and fix it so any future development doesn't compound those issues going forward.
So when you're talking about Gardner doing subdivisions, they also look at commercial in the city. Why do they do that?
It depends on the complexity. They will have to look at it to some degree because whenever you have the development, there's that plat review, and so we do need to have that professional surveyor. Now, if we were to reduce Gardner, and you could always contract out to your own surveyor to have that done. But depending on the size of the commercial development, I mean, some of those are pretty simple. I know Ed talked a lot with, we had a developer looking to come in south of the coffee shop here on Midland, and Ed just looked at it and said, "You're not going to be able to fit. You can't get your traffic routes in and out." And that never even went to our contract engineer, because Ed was able to just take the initial look and say, "No way." And so he literally is acting as the gatekeeper. Once we get to the point where you get like the development that we're looking at right now that was approved, that gets bigger, and that's where we do put it over to them to have them take a look at all the storm drain connections, all that. He does do a review of the plans, and really he takes a look at the notes that Gardner generates, and he's relaying that to the developer as we go through. So he's taking those notes and making sure those are enforced as we go through the process. So Gardner's still involved on a lot of those, and it just the gatekeeper and when the off and on valve is turned as we go through that.
So you said that Ed will take the notes from Gardner and relay that to the developer.
Mm-hmm.
Who does the double check on calculations and making sure everything's to city code as far as an engineering standpoint? Is that Ed or is that Gardner?
Well, Gardner does that, and Ed will. I would have to confirm that.
Okay.
That's a question I have not asked, and so rather than misspeak, I'd be happy to touch base back and just confirm with the council on that.
That would be pretty cool. I think that would be Ed's main job is that the development comes in understanding what we do. I think it kind of circles back to January when I was asking that question and they didn't know how to answer it. So
He should be
It'd be
the
good to
quality
know.
assurance, quality control.
absolutely.
So I'll ask of that.
I think it'd be good to have this sent over so we can have some more time to process it too. One thing on your dates on some of your, if you can go back to this one on here, do we know when Ed actually started? What was his start date? Was it 11/20?
So 11/20 is when the current Gardner contract started. And so that allows us just some clear consistency on comparison of cost. Ed started, he started officially in October of 21. And September, October, I'd have to get that date. But then there's a little bit of overlap with Steve, and then he was full-fledged by end of November or whatnot, I believe.
So on your graph on here, this is for last year, 21?
The pie graph shows costs for the current contract. The tracking line shows the first year of the contract, and then the orange is the second year of the contract. So that we only have services billed through August right now. We haven't received the bills for September, October yet. They usually run a month or so behind.
Gardner also decreased their rates in 2020, if you remember.
That
One of the
also makes it
contracts,
hard
So there's
to-
a little bit of number not quite right in that because they did drop. It's not going to be a ton, but that should be acknowledged.
Yes. So there, yeah, that 2020 rate towards the first of it, we did reduce rates, but you look and we're right up. So the volume during 2021 was actually higher than the 2020 to compensate and equalize that.
Maybe if you could put, when you put year one, maybe just put the year that's there.
Sure thing.
When you send that off to us so we can look at it.
Okay.
It'd be helpful so I don't get the two mixed up. What other questions, council? Okay. Nothing else? Okay, we'll move on then. We'll move on to item number 13, discussion on discovery fee schedule.
So this is something that I have been needing to bring to the council. We kind of talked about this in the spring. The city attorney needed to get a share file program because the how we, Joan and I, have to share discovery with defendants has been changing. When Ken was here, what he would do is he would get discs from UHP and from the Sheriff's Department regarding video and also pictures. Well, that's almost impossible to be able to get video, CDs anymore to be able to copy them. Plus, Ken used to be able to just send the defendants, like counsel, or the defendants themselves to UHP or the Sheriff's Department to just get it directly from them because he didn't have a way to copy these things either. However, a number of months ago, well, probably about 7 or 8 months ago, UHP said we're not providing the defendants any more copies. So then they started providing them to Joan and I on the little drives, the thumb drives, which that was working okay, but what we had done is gotten a Google, the Google storage and tried to do it that way, but it was difficult to try to transfer those that to defendants and to their counsel. And so we came up with this share file, which we consulted with our IT, Russ, as to whether or not this would work. Also, this share file works with the Sheriff's Department and UHP, so they're able to just get into our, be able to deliver it directly into our share file. So that's saved Joan from having to download stuff. That's just being able to be dumped into our stuff, and she can rearrange it and send links to the defendants. Well, that's a cost to the city. And so in order to be able to have the defendants bear that cost instead of the residents bear that cost, I'm going to be bringing a resolution to the city council regarding establishing a fee schedule for discovery to help recover us the costs of having to do that, because under the state and federal constitutions and also the criminal rules that I have to deal with, I am required to provide discovery to all defendants. When it comes to indigent defendants, they don't have to pay anything because that they're provided that, and the judge has to deem somebody indigent. He has to go through a whole bunch of questions regarding, whether what their job is, how many dependents they have, whether or not they have, assets, cars, house, whatever, before he has to make a formal determination that somebody is indigent and either they then would be able to qualify for a public defender. So when it comes to public defender asking for these type of things, they don't have to pay anything. But the proposal that I'm making is that the electronic delivery of media, so video, audio, or pictures, would be $25. Electronic delivery of police or other written reports larger than 1 page, so that would be more than the 1-page citation alone, would be $5. And then electronic delivery of citation, lots of times so you have the citation, but then the officers will have a citation that they've made notes on, and it's just 1 page. And that would be free, because that's doesn't take very much to be able to just download, just to send the citation. But
so Amy, how will these be collected and billed? What's the process for that?
So what I have done is Box Elder County Attorney's Office started doing this a number of years ago, and they the program that they use actually works. Let's see, it is Express Forms, and the reason why they started using that is that it works. It's a good integration with Cassell. So I contacted Ryan Child to find out, if he could do some research to make sure that we would be able to set it up with the city. Basically, what happens is there's a link. You go in, you click the link. It states this is how much, you have to pay for the discovery. They then pay it, and then they are granted access to the discovery, and they can download it off of.
So it's a pay before receipt. So
Yep.
you're just
Yes.
right there, no billing. Okay.
But I made sure to try to do some research as to what's already working so that it would work with us and it wouldn't be as big of a deal to try to get it set up, and wanted to make sure that Ryan could integrate that with our systems so that the money because Joan and I have no way of collecting money, nor do we want to have any way of collecting money. And so we needed to find a way for them to be able to just pay directly. And like I said, this the county attorney's office up in Box Elder, they've already done it. They've basically already figured out what works, what doesn't work. And Ryan, and part of the reason why it's taken a little bit of time to get this to you guys is because when I first brought it to Ryan, it was in March/April, so that was tax season. And then we talked about it again in May, June, and that was budget season. And so it's been a little bit of, there's been a little lag time with that. But
yeah, I just didn't want it to be a billing process where we had to go find them. So that just answered my question.
Ryan said it's good integration, and they wouldn't be getting the discovery until they've paid that fee. It's pretty standard. Lots of cities and counties do it for this very reason. So this residents don't have to pay for some of the prosecution of defendants.
How many usually a month do you go through? What would be the cost that the city's been paying maybe in a month, just to break it down a little bit?
Matt, do you remember how much the subscription was? Was it $800? Do you or Emily remember? Was it $800 or $900 for the year?
Yeah, it's less than $1,000. Yeah.
But so you have that, but then you have all of Joan's time. So, and it just depends on how many cases that we have going on. I mean, every week, this week was an anomaly, but we're usually at 25 cases every week. And so depending on depending on the week, it could be 3 or 4 attorneys. It could be all Randy Richards, who's our public defender. It just kind of depends on the week as to, how many, but we've been averaging really 25 cases, which is, Ken used to only have to do anywhere between 10 to maybe 15 cases per week, and he used to only be doing 2 court days per month. It had moved to 3 right before I took over, but since I've taken over, it's always been 4, and the judge made a ruling that it would be 5. If there's 5 Tuesdays, we're doing 5 Tuesdays of court at 25 cases. And there's been usually at least 2 trials per week too. We haven't had to do a jury trial yet, but.
Okay. Does council have any other questions?
So December, we'll have the public hearing then for it.
Okay. You'll bring that in a resolution?
Yeah, it'll be in a resolution. I've actually already written the resolution and the staff report and sent it over to Emily so that we can get it noticed up.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. We'll move over to our next item on here is number 14, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I think we're good. Thank you very much.